The introduction of a new console generation doesn't always just mean improved graphics. It can often improve a lot of the game mechanics quite a bit as well, or, in some cases, help create entirely new ones. The introduction of new, faster CPUs allows programmers to do things that they could never do before. A perfect example of this from last generation is Red Faction Guerrilla. Mostly forgotten now, along with pretty much the entire Red Faction series, Guerrilla elevated the player's ability to mess with the environment to new heights with its vast destructive opportunities, powered by a physics engine that was very impressive for the time and is still somewhat impressive even today. If you're not familiar with the Red Faction series, destruction has always kind of been a huge part of it. One of the biggest selling points for the original game was something called Geomod, which allowed for deformation and destruction of both terrain and structures. But there were no real physics happening. The game was basically substituting an empty space where there was once geometry. A great hack that allowed really crazy stuff at the time, but Red Faction Guerrilla does much more than that. Every structure topples exactly how you'd expect it to. Take out the supports and the whole building collapses. A few expertly placed explosive charges and some convenient explosive barrels can bring an entire building down in a single button press. Or you can always opt to bring it to the ground with your hammer. And the game would have been pretty great even with just those destruction mechanics, but since this is a big budget game, it can't come out with some sort of combat, even though the game probably would have been better off without it. It feels absolutely tacked on. You switch to an assault rifle or pistol in the same menu you're choosing your destructive abilities from, and you just hold down the trigger until the enemy soldiers die. There's no real impact to it at all, and it's abundantly clear that the gunplay in this game was an afterthought. And that'd be fine if it was just off to the side, but the game is constantly requiring you to engage with this afterthought. Now, the story that gives a reason to both the destruction and the combat is also pretty inconsequential. The usual story of a regular Joe who unwittingly gets caught up in a rebellion against an evil overlord, whatever. The point is that it gives you the opportunity to blow a bunch of shit up, and a rebellion certainly gives you ample cause to do so, and makes way for the game's core progression mechanic, which requires you to create as much mayhem in an area as possible in order to take it over and then move on to the next area. By modern open world standards, I will admit that Guerrilla is a bit thin on stuff to do. There are only a handful of relatively basic activity types, and most of what you're going to be doing in the game is just destroying structures. But the act of destruction is inherently so much fun that the game remains entertaining for quite a while, though I think it does eventually overstay its welcome, never really changing anything about its gameplay, never really introducing new mechanics. But the reason I think Guerrilla is still worth looking at today, despite its relatively rudimentary nature in a lot of areas, is that no one has really done what it does well better. Destruction did become a large part of other games like Battlefield Bad Company, but the newer games in the series have seen that fade away. I imagine these borderline ridiculous physics often create a slew of issues for game creators when they try to implement them, but in the case of Red Faction Guerrilla, those issues help contribute to the fun. There is so much wrong with this game, from its story, to its progression, to its combat, but at the core of it all is a destructive ability that is just laid bare at the feet of the player, and it makes playing this game, despite its myriad issues, an absolute joy. Every Friday, I look at a game that was ignored when it came out, or has been forgotten since. Games that people have missed. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe so you can see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and thanks for watching.